Alaska, the land of ice stretching across snow-covered mountains, rivers frozen year-round, and deep, endless forests, has long nurtured countless legends. Within the treasury of myths from the indigenous tribes here, especially the Tlingit and their neighboring communities, there exists a mysterious being that inspires both curiosity and fear. This is the Kushtaka, often called by its chilling name, the Otter Men. The Kushtaka is not simply a creature half human, half animal. In the minds of the native people, it is a shadowy presence, a lurking terror on stormy nights, a voice calling from across the river, a deadly temptation hidden beneath the innocent form of an otter. Perhaps no other symbol evokes both familiarity and horror as vividly as the Kushtaka, a being that stands at the boundary between human and nature, between life and death, between salvation and destruction. The origin of the dread. According to stories passed down through generations, the Kushtaka often appears near rivers, coastlines, or winding streams deep in the Alaskan wilderness. It is believed to possess the power of shape-shifting, sometimes appearing as an ordinary otter, other times taking on the likeness of a deceased loved one, or even a friend or family member of the unsuspecting wanderer. This ability makes the Kushtaka especially dangerous, for a familiar glance or a gentle voice from afar can draw a traveler closer, never to return. The Tlingit tell that the Kushtaka is not merely a deceiver out to harm. Its role is ambiguous, both predator and lost spirit. Some legends say that when a person drowns, the Kushtaka appears to save them, but this salvation is not resurrection. Instead, it is transformation, turning the human into another Kushtaka. Thus, their cycle continues, and the fear spreads, retold in hushed voices around the fire on long winter nights. Kushtaka, form and features. In folklore, the Kushtaka is enormous compared to ordinary otters. They are human-sized, covered in thick dark brown fur, with glowing eyes and hands and feet webbed like an otter's. When they wish, they assume human form, often to lure the lost. But in their true essence, their eerie whistles or shrill cries echo through the forests and mountains, like a wandering call in the vast wilderness. A striking trait is that the Kushtaka usually appears to those who are alone, especially in perilous situations, snowstorms, getting lost in the woods, or when paddling across treacherous waters. Strange sounds, resembling the cry of a child or the voice of a loved one calling one's name, are believed to be signs of the Kushtaka's presence. And once a person answers, they have already stepped one foot into the realm of death. Role in indigenous belief. For the Tlingit, the Kushtaka is more than just a tale to frighten children. It reflects the complex relationship between humans and nature. Alaska's wilderness is both a source of life and a deadly threat. The Kushtaka embodies this duality, alluring yet dangerous, salvific yet destructive. In certain rituals, people would even pray to avoid being lured by the Kushtaka. The Tlingit believed that metallic sounds, especially the ringing of copper or iron, could drive the Kushtaka away. Salt and fire were also considered effective weapons. For this reason, hunters, fishermen, and travelers often carried small items that could produce sound or flame, like talismans to ward off the invisible force. A folk tale, The Voice by the River. One of the most often retold legends is the story of a young hunter who lost his way in the forest during winter. Exhausted as he searched for the path home, he suddenly heard, from afar, his mother's voice, gentle and familiar, warming his heart amid the bitter cold. He rushed toward the call, but the further he went, the more unfamiliar the surroundings became. At last, he came upon a figure that looked exactly like his mother, standing by the riverbank. The woman smiled and stretched out her arms in welcome. But as he drew closer, her eyes glowed an unnatural yellow, and her face slowly twisted into the furred visage of a half-human, half-otter creature. It was the Kushtaka. Terrified, he screamed and tried to flee, but the thick snow weighed down his steps. A chilling whistle echoed through the forest. The young hunter was never seen in the village again. The Tlingits say that on bright moonlit nights, if someone passes through that forest, they may still hear a lonely voice crying out, like that of a young man begging for help. But everyone knows it is no longer human, but another Kushtaka searching for its next victim. Fear and the lesson within the myth. The Kushtaka is the embodiment of the fear of becoming lost or freezing to death in Alaska. The land here is so unforgiving that even a single moment of misdirection could cost one's life. The people of old created the legend of the Kushtaka as a reminder: never let your guard down in the wilderness, never wander alone, and always keep a fire close to you for warmth. The myth also carries a philosophy: not everything familiar is to be trusted. A voice, a beloved face, could be nothing more than an illusion, the deceptive form of an enemy. This message reaches beyond mythology; it is a life lesson in vigilance and clarity. Kushtaka in the writings of outsiders. When Western explorers and missionaries arrived in Alaska, they too heard stories of the Kushtaka. Many compared it to werewolves or vampires of the icy north. But in truth, the Kushtaka is far more unique, not merely a man-eater, but a shape-shifting spirit, a bridge between the world of the living and those drowned in icy waters. Some records even claim that Kushtaka can appear in groups, laughing and mocking as they transform humans into their own kind. This makes them all the more terrifying, not solitary predators, but a hidden community, existing in parallel with humankind. The lands tied to the Kushtaka. Along Alaska's coast, many places are forever linked with the Kushtaka legends. Sheer cliffs, rushing rivers, and deep gorges all are believed to be. They appear in such places, and the Tlingit often avoid going there alone. If they must pass through, they carry charms or travel in groups to reduce the risk of being lured. In the region of Sitka, once the center of the Tlingit people, the legend of the Kushtaka is especially common. Elders tell these stories to the younger generations not only to preserve culture, but also to warn of the very real dangers of the forests, mountains, and glaciers. Variants of the Kushtaka legend. In the oral traditions of the Tlingit and neighboring tribes, the Kushtaka does not always appear in a single fixed form. Along the coasts, they often resemble sea otters, clever, agile creatures tied closely to the lives of fishermen. In the deep forests, however, the Kushtaka takes on the shape of a towering figure, like a wild man cloaked in thick fur. Among certain other tribes, they are described as smaller, mischievous, and cunning, more like goblins in European folklore. Some stories even grant the Kushtaka conflicting personalities, sometimes cruel, spreading death, and sometimes carrying a strange form of salvation. One legend tells that when a person is on the brink of freezing to death, the Kushtaka will transform them into one of its kind, so that they no longer suffer the pain of dying. In a way, it is a release. But to the eyes of the living, it remains a loss, for their loved one has become something different, something no longer human. Kushtaka and the connection to water. Water, whether ocean, river, or stream, is always bound to the image of the Kushtaka. It is believed that the souls of those who drown are the most easily turned into Kushtaka. Thus, when someone vanishes in a flood or after a journey by boat, the family grieves not only for the loss, but also fears that their loved one may have become a wandering Kushtaka. Traditional rituals were often performed to guide the spirits of the dead back to their ancestors, ensuring they would not be seized by the Kushtaka. This shows that the Kushtaka was more than just a myth; it had a deep influence on belief and funeral practices. Another tale, the man deceived by the light. In a small coastal village, there is an age-old story of a middle-aged fisherman. One stormy winter night, he went out to fish and never returned. The next morning, when villagers searched for him, they found his footprints trailing along the beach, leading toward a dangerous cliff. It is said that during the night, he saw a flickering light, like the torches of villagers searching for him. Overjoyed, he followed the light, but the farther he went, the more it drifted away. In truth, it was the trick of the Kushtaka. When his final footprints were found at the cliff's edge, below lay nothing but raging waves. His body was never recovered, and ever since, that cliff has been called the place where the Kushtaka calls. The tale is told to children as a warning: never chase strange lights or follow vague voices in the night. Kushtaka and parallels in world mythology. When compared with legends from elsewhere, the Kushtaka shares many traits with other famous shapeshifters. In Japanese mythology, the kitsune, the nine-tailed fox, also possesses the ability to take human form to deceive. In European lore, sirens or mermaids use their enchanting songs to lure sailors to their deaths. What makes the Kushtaka truly unique is its combination of the otter, a creature usually seen as friendly and endearing, with something monstrous and supernatural. This stark contrast heightens the sense of dread. What seems harmless may conceal deadly danger. It mirrors perfectly the spirit of Alaska's wilderness: beautiful yet lethal, gentle yet merciless. Philosophical meaning: vigilance and the strength of community. At its core, the Kushtaka is not merely a superstition to inspire fear. It carries profound lessons about life. The Tlingit people always emphasized the value of community. A person wandering alone is far more likely to fall victim to the Kushtaka. By contrast, traveling in groups, surrounded by the community, lessens the danger. This teaches later generations the importance of unity, not only for survival in a harsh environment, but also for standing against the unseen darkness. The Kushtaka is also a reminder of humility. Nature is never simple, never forgiving. Those who underestimate the forest or dismiss the fury of a snowstorm are the ones most easily swallowed. A tale: the woman who heard a baby crying. Another legend tells of a young woman who crossed the forest in search of medicinal herbs. As she passed a stream, she heard the sound of a baby crying. Her motherly heart urged her closer, and there by the water's edge, she saw an infant sitting and weeping. Without hesitation, she ran forward. But the moment she reached out, the baby transformed into a Kushtaka, bearing sharp teeth. She screamed and stumbled back, but by fortune, she carried a silver bracelet, a gift from her mother. The bracelet gleamed under the moonlight, and the Kushtaka shrieked before vanishing into the water. The woman survived, and ever since, the villagers believed that silver could also ward off the Kushtaka, just as fire and salt could. From then on, travelers often carried a piece of silver jewelry as a protective charm. Kushtaka in collective memory. It is no accident that the Kushtaka legend has endured for centuries. It is a mirror reflecting the collective memory of the Tlingit and other tribes. To speak of the Kushtaka is not only to tell of a monstrous being, but to recall the fierce wilderness, the losses suffered, and the courage required to endure. The legend became part of their identity, helping later generations understand how their ancestors lived and struggled in Alaska's unforgiving land. And within that fear lies a quiet pride that humanity endured, that the story was passed on, even as the shadow of the Kushtaka forever lurked nearby. Whispers in modern times. Even in the 20th and 21st centuries, vague reports of the Kushtaka continue. Some claim to have heard strange whistling deep in the woods, or glimpsed a hazy figure by the riverbank. A few researchers have compared the Kushtaka to Bigfoot, North America's legendary wild man. but indigenous people insist the Kushtaka is different, more spirit than beast. Whether real or born of imagination, the Kushtaka continues to shape Alaska's cultural identity and storytelling tradition. It keeps alive the sense of mystery and unpredictability in this land, leaving both visitors and locals alike with the feeling that Alaska will always remain wild, untamed and haunted by whispers from the river's edge. The ancestral tale, Two Brothers on the Snowy Mountain. One of the most popular legends about the Kushtaka is the story of two Tlingit brothers who went up the mountain to hunt in the winter. They carried bows, arrows, a small supply of dried food, and planned to return after 3 days. But on the second night, a fierce blizzard struck. As the wind howled and the snow swirled, the younger brother suddenly heard their father's voice, clear and unmistakable, calling from the ravine, "This way, I am waiting." Without hesitation, the younger brother began to follow the voice, despite his elder brother's attempts to hold him back. When a flicker of torchlight appeared in the darkness, the younger brother became convinced it was truly their father. The elder brother chased after him, and in the dim glow of the torch he saw a familiar figure. But then the eyes flashed an eerie yellow, and the face cracked open to reveal fangs and claws. Horrified, the elder brother realized it was the Kushtaka. He shouted and hurled the steel knife their father had left him. The metallic clang echoed, causing the Kushtaka to shriek and vanish into the snow, leaving the younger brother trembling and collapsed. Thanks to his vigilance and the steel talisman, both brothers escaped death. This story underscores the belief that metal can repel the Kushtaka, while also reminding people to remain calm in a snowstorm because not every familiar voice can truly be trusted. The contrast, Kushtaka the destroyer and Kushtaka the redeemer. There is an intriguing paradox. While most stories depict the Kushtaka as a harmful creature, some legends suggest that it can bring salvation to the soul. When a person is near death in the wilderness, the Kushtaka transforms them into one of its kind, sparing them from the pain and fear of dying. This is why the Kushtaka is not always seen as pure evil. It is a being of the threshold, the border between life and death, between human and non-human. This twisted form of salvation reflects humanity's deepest desire, to escape helplessness before the forces of nature. Kushtaka and the human mind. Viewed through the lens of psychology, the Kushtaka can be seen as a metaphor for primal fears, fear of becoming lost, fear of abandonment, fear of losing one's identity. When the Kushtaka takes the form of a loved one, it is exploiting the deepest emotions within humans, the yearning for reunion and protection. Yet it is this very temptation that leads to destruction. Thus, the legend is not only a warning about the harshness of nature but also a reminder that humans must control their emotions, and not let love or longing cloud their reason. The tale, the shaman and the Kushtaka. Another legend tells of an old village shaman who once encountered the Kushtaka. One night during a festival, as everyone danced around the fire, he noticed a young man step beyond the circle of light, heading toward the dark forest. The shaman followed and found the youth speaking with a beautiful woman, enchanting beyond words. But the shaman immediately sensed something wrong. Her eyes reflected the firelight with an unnatural golden glow. He took a pinch of salt, cast it to the ground, and chanted a spell. Instantly, the woman screamed, transformed into a Kushtaka, and vanished. The young man survived, but afterward he was forever haunted by the memory of how close he had come to being lured away. From that day on, the villagers placed even greater faith in the power of salt and the spiritual rituals used to ward off the Kushtaka. Kushtaka compared to Bigfoot and Wendigo. In native North American culture, many legendary beings coexist in the imagination. In the forested mountains of southern Alaska, people speak of Bigfoot, a giant, hairy creature who usually roams alone. Meanwhile, in the freezing northeast, there is the legend of the Wendigo, a ravenous spirit that devours human flesh. The Kushtaka stands apart because of its more social nature. They often appear in groups, even laughing and joking as they lure victims. They are not simply man-eating monsters, they also seek to transform humans into their own kind. This makes them resemble a hidden parallel community to humankind, both close and yet distant. A modern view, Kushtaka as a cultural symbol. Today, many Alaskan artists have drawn inspiration from the figure of the Kushtaka for paintings, sculptures, and even documentaries. In popular culture, the Kushtaka has become a character that is both terrifying and fascinating. It symbolizes the meeting point between indigenous tradition and modern imagination. Some suggest that the Kushtaka also reflects the identity crisis of native communities, torn between preserving the culture of their ancestors and adapting to the influences of the outside world. Just like the Kushtaka standing between two realms, indigenous people often find themselves standing between tradition and modernity. The tale, The Missing Tourist. A modern story has been passed down. In the 1970s, a group of American tourists camped in the Sitka region. One of them, a middle-aged man, vanished while walking along a stream. His friends recalled that, just before disappearing, he said he had heard the voice of his wife calling from a distance. The strange thing was, his wife was still in California. Despite days of searching, no trace was ever found, except for a few odd footprints in the snow, shaped like human feet but webbed. The locals whispered, it was the Kushtaka. And thus, this tale became another piece of evidence for the lingering presence of the legend, even in modern times. Kushtaka and moral lessons. On a deeper level, the Kushtaka also carries symbolic meaning about honesty and strength of character. Those who are greedy, selfish, or weak are the easiest prey for the Kushtaka's deception. By contrast, those who are steadfast, strong, and grounded in their community can resist temptation. For this reason, the Kushtaka legend became a tool for teaching, warning children never to wander alone, urging young people to remain resolute, and reminding the entire community of the value of solidarity. Meaning in ritual and storytelling. During winter gatherings, the Tlingit would often recount Kushtaka stories around the fire. The tales were passed from the elders to the young, not only for entertainment but also as a way to preserve collective memory. Each retelling was embellished and reshaped, keeping the Kushtaka ever fresh, ever frightening. In wood carvings and ceremonial masks, the Kushtaka is often depicted with round, glowing eyes, sharp teeth, and a body that is half human, half beast. These masks were used in ritual dances both to tell stories and to tame fear through art. Kushtaka as part of Alaska's nature. Looking more broadly, the Kushtaka is the very embodiment of Alaska's wilderness. Like the otter, which can dive deep and live in both water and on land, the Kushtaka symbolizes flexibility, ambiguity, and the absence of boundaries. The people of Alaska had to learn to live with this dual nature of the land, both generous and unforgiving. When the snow falls thick across the sky, when waves crash against the cliffs, people feel that the Kushtaka is present somewhere, woven into the landscape. No one sees it clearly, yet everyone believes it is there. A global connection, a universal myth. What makes the Kushtaka remarkable is that it is not merely a creation of the Tlingit people. The figure of a shape-shifting being that deceives humans appears across the world. But the Kushtaka belongs uniquely to Alaska with its harsh winters and the terror of freezing to death. It shows how every culture invents stories to explain, to endure, and to confront primal fears. Through the Kushtaka, we see that human beings have always needed stories to warn, to unite, and to survive. The Kushtaka, the Otter Men, are not just legendary creatures spreading terror in Alaska's wilderness. They are symbols of the wild itself, of the blurred line between salvation and destruction, of human vigilance and resilience. In the eerie whistle that cuts through a winter's night, in the golden gleam of eyes hidden in a familiar face, the Kushtaka reminds us that nature is always twofold, beautiful and perilous. And more than that, the legend teaches people to remain united, to stay humble, and to keep the fire of awareness burning within. Over 1,000 years have passed, yet the tale of the Kushtaka still echoes along Alaska's coasts, in the snow-laden forests, in the memories and spirits of the native people. It is not just a myth, but the whispered voice of the ancestors, urging future generations, live wisely, respect nature's power, and above all protect and care for one another. When night falls over the icy mountains, someone may hear a familiar voice calling in the wind. But the people of Alaska know well never follow it. For it may be the Kushtaka, the Otter Man, forever standing on the border between man and beast, between life and death.